need that extra clay to support the horizontal wall of the bowl. You need that much more clay for a plate. So I think a general rule of thumb for like a normal size, like a 10-inch dinnerware plate, I think it's 3 pounds of clay, which is like a little bit bigger than a grapefruit. So this is a scale that you can use. Sometimes, I don't usually use a scale, but if you feel like weighing out your clay, at least knowing like how much you're using, you can do that. So that's 3 pounds. It's like oversized grapefruit. And so really the trick with plates, just like the general tip I would give, is we're going to be flattening out a piece of clay, and you want to try and control it as you flatten it. Because you can spread it like pretty easily, you just push down, right? The clay spreads, but we want to control that spread as we like make this disc happen. So I'm using, and like Brownie has one here, this is a bat. This is probably the easiest way to make plates using a throwing bat. And these are your bat pins. The bat pins have a wing nut on the back, so you just screw them. I'll show you. You got it, right? Wing nut goes underneath. Sometimes I just open this up, it's easy to put them on. They don't have to be like clenched down super tight. I just do finger tight, it's fine. And then the bat goes on top. You can get all different kinds of bats. I like these MDF ones. There's plastic ones. I think like this is a little bit nicer of a particle board. Where'd it go? Anyway. And they come in different sizes too. So you can get bats that are bigger than your wheel head. If you want to make a platter this big, you can get a bat that fits like over the actual wheel head. So you can make bats too, it's pretty easy. So the bat, these wood ones especially, I like to add just like the teeniest bit of water and rub it into it to make it tacky. Not a lot, I don't want any water like slipping, but that'll help the clay stick. And then because we are working with more clay, it's a little harder to center, but this clay is super soft. If you can feel how soft it is right there. And what's nice about plates is that there's like almost no horizontal movement, so it doesn't need much strength, your clay. So it's really just like flattening it out, and then you raise up the lip just a little bit. So you can work with really soft clay. If you ever have a bunch of soft clay, it's like, oh, maybe I should just make a plate, kind of feeling. But whenever I do work with more clay, I do like to try and pat it into place. It helps save your joints from like tennis elbow or golfer's elbow and stuff like that. So either turn it on slowly or just like pat it into place like this. I'm just trying to get it centered before I even add water. Okay, and that helps. Sometimes you get these plastic bats that, or over time, these wear out the holes, and you get kind of this like rocking that happens. I sometimes just shove a little bit of clay in there, and that helps the rocking stop. When they're new, it's so nice. And the reason that everyone here at this studio, we want you to have your own bats, is because they're like, I think like $8 or $9 each, and taking care of them properly is important. You don't ever want to soak these, like dump them in the water. You just want to sponge them off, because they will, it's MDF, it's like part of the board. So, I write my name on them, so I don't lose them. So adding water, I want to just center this clay. I'll kind of up and down pretty much the same way as I do for everything else. My clay is nice and soft, so it squeezes really easily. Oops. How's everyone feeling with centering? Good. Okay. All right, so that's a couple times. And so now, at this point, I want to start thinking about centering my clay into the shape that is beneficial for making plates. So that is a much lower and wider centering than kind of that doorknob shape that I suggest it for other forms. So this is what I was talking about, where we want to control the flattening of it. I suggest using like a closed fist and put your elbow into your ribs. And I often, when I'm making plates, I get like clay all over my shirt because I'm like hunched over like this, actually just using my body to push down. And that's a much like stronger, or I have much more control than if I'm like out here doing this, right? That makes sense. So this hand's pushing down, and this hand's just kind of a mold that is controlling the spreading of the clay. So what that looks like is this. Slowly just kind of pushing. Have water when I need to. And I do want to kind of push it wider than it is already. If you have a ton of slip and water on your bat, as we're like pancaking this out and spreading it, we want to make sure the clay's adhered to the bat itself. And if you have a bunch of gunk here, water or whatever, it might not stick. So taking a sponge or just trying to clean that up so that the clay adheres easily to the bat is helpful. So I'm using my fist, and it's almost like I've dropped my hole, right? There is no actual like opening up the clay. This is pretty much what I'm doing right now. I'm dropping the hole, and then I'm gonna start pulling my fist towards my belly button. The hand on the outside is controlling the spreading of it. And I do want with plates, the very center to be the lowest point. Go fast. And so I'm making a disc. Half of the work with making plates is just preparing and putting the clay into the right place before you throw the lid. And so for me, what I like for a plate is, I do like it to look flat, but it actually is the most shallow bowl, so that if I put a pea over here, it would kind of roll to the center, maybe slowly, but I'd like it to look flat, but it actually has the tedious curve. So what I'm doing right now is, well actually first I want to compress some clay into the center. Plates have a tendency to warp in the kiln. Anything that is really horizontal will warp in the kiln. So compressing the clay makes it stronger. So I'm just kind of dragging like the very top layer of the clay into the center. I'll do this a couple times. Trying not to change the depth of the clay at all, just compressing it. All right, and now I want to actually start thinking about the shape of this disc. And I'm using my fingers just for feel and also like the shape of my fingers. And I'm pushing down here. I like to go. I go up towards 12 o'clock. I don't know why. I just do that. I'm trying to get a continuous curve, because if we can get this set up mostly like almost finished at this point, it makes our life so much easier later. So plates are really fun to throw for me. They can be extremely easy, and then other days they're extremely frustrating. But I love surface decoration, and so I like to think of them along with like large bowls and platters as like a great opportunity for surface decoration. So notice this is a much thicker lip up here, and it is thinner, or lowest down right in the center. So take your time, get it where you want it, the clay where you want it. And then once you get it as wide as you want, or as wide as, not as wide as you want, because you have limitations with how much clay you have, you want it, the thickness of it to be like no less than ½ an inch thick. So that, yeah, that's about ½ an inch, right? So I wouldn't want to stretch this out anymore. Now I have to compress this again. So my limitations are there. So another thing to think about, and really is apparent with plates, is our shrinkage of the clay. If you want a 10-inch plate at the end of the whole process, you have to calculate for that with shrinkage. So I know, let's say this clay body shrinks 12%. I need to make an 11.2 inch wide plate, and then it'll shrink to 10 at the end of it. We do have on a string over there, for every single clay body, we have the shrinkage test on there, so you can actually measure it and calculate the shrinkage of the clays if you're interested, or if you're not, like just go for it. But if you want plates that match, it is kind of nice throwing them to the same diameter every single time. All right, so now I'm pretty happy with this. I'm gonna come in with my wooden rib. I like to have a wooden rib, metal rib, and a rubber rib. I'm just gonna use the actual curve of the rib to try and make it nice and continuous by rocking it and maybe moving it too. In and out. So, happy with that. Slow this down. I wanna get underneath and clay a little. And I wanna compress this lip. So before we were compressing our lips like that, or just kind of the top, I want to compress this whole ring of clay before I lift it up. So I'm using my sponge, and it could be a normal yellow sponge. But if I think of this as the clay, I'm trying to saddle the clay, saddle the sponge over the clay. So that's what's going on here, and that's helping compress and even out my lip. All right, so now I want to get underneath it. And right there, that's like, it could be a done plate. But I do have an opportunity to throw this lip a little bit more, because I do have a lot of extra clay there. So I'm gonna, just like a normal bowl or cylinder, getting underneath it and throwing the clay up and out. And just like plates, how I tend to do it, I throw higher and skinnier, and then I stretch down and out. Remember the stretching of the bowls? Worked. So, because as we know with trimming, we want the top like inch of our stuff to be finished. It makes trimming a lot easier. So then I come in and I grab my metal rib. Having a clean rib is helpful. These can cut you, by the way. They're like the worst metal, like paper cut kind of thing. It's the worst. Okay, so compressing my lip, and now it's a higher up lip, so just compressing it a little bit. So just like the bowl, I'm gonna start at the top and push and try and flatten this lip out and down. And matching that curve that I set when I took all of that time to compress my clay. All right, and I can't really push much past beyond that point. Now I'm just using the rib. I'm not really pushing anymore, I'm just dragging it to get rid of the gunk slip. So notice it's not perpendicular, it's pretty flush almost to the surface, and it's just polishing it in a way. When you get close to the center, and this is true for bowls too, for anything, notice I'm lifting up this edge, because it's gonna go over to the 9 o'clock side, and that's when you're gonna gouge your piece if it by accident like touches the clay over there. So if I can just lift it as I go over, it'll help me out a bunch. So I'm lifting and I'm watching that point of contact. It's just gonna get close, and then just goes right over the top. Do it one more time. The issues with plates, just like bowls, I mean really a plate's just a very, very shallow bowl, is you have those innie or outie belly buttons and that like weird transition point right here between the thrown clay and where there's extra clay. So that's the general gist of it. There's all different kinds of plates too, but that's that. And taking it off the wheel is, if you have these bats, it's super simple. Just make sure you wire it. I'd wire it off, and then the small ones can be annoying. Sometimes you need it, like a needle tool to get under it. And the needle is off. But I wired it before I did this. Okay? So, and you can see how much extra clay is down there. Right? It's a lot of trimming to do later on. But you need that extra clay to support the horizontal. And then trimming it, I would want a foot like this wide. So Yeah. How's that sound? Try it out. If you don't have bats, you can totally do it on this surface. Maybe don't use 3 pounds, try 2, and we can try and hydroplane it off. So you make a brownie or like